Everyone, I am John Gossett with the Life's Worth Living Foundation. I wanted to take a minute tonight. Amid all the fears that we're having with COVID-19 or the coronavirus, a lot of us are sheltering in place. A lot of us have been spending a lot more time at home. Some of you may be homeschooling your kids because they're unable to go to school. What's interesting about this whole thing is we've seen a lot of changes in our world, and I think we're rolling with the punches and we're doing what we have to do. But the one thing that I think has been shocking to me that I've seen on the news lately is that we're having an increase in domestic violence. We're having an increase in substance abuse and addictions. We're having an increase in all types of abuse, including sexual abuse. The other day on the news, they were talking about the state of California. And they were saying that in the ERs, they are seeing just this huge, overwhelming trend of sexual abuse among children. And, I think that all is being tied back to the COVID-19. So what's interesting is I've spent about the last year and a half, and we have been doing a little bit of study on what we call childhood disrupted. What childhood disrupted talks about is it talks about adverse childhood experiences. It's also known as the ACEs test. It's a test that includes 10 questions that talk about what you went through growing up. I kind of want to read through these and just kind of give you a taste of what these questions are. Think about these questions as we go through. Question 1, did a parent or another adult in the household often or very often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt? That's a yes or a no. Question 2, did a parent or another adult in the household often or very often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? Again, yes or no. Question 3, did an adult or person at least 5 years older than you ever touch or fondle you, or have you touched their body in a sexual way, or attempt to touch you inappropriately or sexually abuse you? Yes or no. Question 4, did you often or very often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought that you were important or special, or feel that your family members didn't look out for one another, feel close to one another, or support one another? Yes or no. Question 5, did you often or very often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, or had no one to protect you, or that your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you, or take you to the doctor if you needed it? Yes or no. Question 6, was a biological parent ever lost to you through divorce, abandonment, or for another reason? Yes or no. Question 7, was your mother or stepmother often or very often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or have something thrown at her? Or was she sometimes often or very often kicked, bitten, or hit with a fist? Or hit with something hard? Or ever repeatedly hit over the course of at least a few minutes or threatened with a gun or knife? Yes or no. Question 8. Did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or alcoholic or who used street drugs? Yes or no. Question 9, was a household member depressed or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? Yes or no. And finally, the final question, did a household member go to prison? Yes or no. So that is the questions that are asked in the ACEs test. So back in the 1980s, there was a physician in San Diego, California, that was kind of seeing a correlation between children that had suffered, adverse childhood experiences, things that were rough on kids, and later health problems that came as an adult. And so that physician went ahead and started discussing these things and doing a little study of his own. And it ended up going to the CDC, where the CDC said, you know what, I think you're onto something, and let's go ahead and continue to investigate this, and we'd like you to work with a physician that was employed by the CDC, the Center of Disease Control. So those two physicians sat and did this ACEs study, and this again was in the 1980s, and they started to see this huge correlation between what children went through in their childhood to what it did later on in life. So those questions are very specific, and what they said was a score of 4 they considered to be high, and anything above 4 was extreme. And so I want to talk about some of the findings that they had. They said with each ACEs score, so each question you answer yes to, that you were 20% more likely to suffer from an autoimmune disease. Isn't that interesting? Why would it affect your immune system? They felt like originally that your brain was, immune free. There was nothing you could do that would damage your brain. We found that some of these adverse childhood experiences did cause damage. It damaged brain development. It made things like your immune system weakened. So for somebody that suffers with a 4 or more, that person is twice as likely to get cancer in adulthood, 460 times more likely to be depressed, suffer with bouts of real depression. They said of people that had a score of 4 or higher, 1 in 5 of those people would attempt suicide, which made those people 1,220% higher for a chance of attempting suicide. Those are some extreme changes. So even going on beyond 4, if you were to look at people with a 6 or higher score, they found that those people, their lifespan would be shortened by at least 20 years. 20 years. Think about that. For having a score of 6 or higher. Now, for a score of 7 and above, what they did was they looked at people with a 7 or higher that were healthy. They ate right. They didn't drink. They didn't smoke. They didn't do drugs. They were physically fit. Of those people, they were still 360% higher chance of having cardiovascular heart disease. Now, of those children that suffered a loss of a parent or were physically beaten, they said they were more likely as an adult to suffer with cardiovascular disease, diabetes, multiple sclerosis, lupus, have cancer, or have a stroke. So, I think as we're all kind of in this unknown of the coronavirus and the COVID-19, I think it's important for us to realize, we are spending more time with our families. As we spend more time with our families, we need to think about how we're affecting what our children are going to grow up to be and what they're going to experience as an adult. I think it's so important. We've got to get this under wraps. We've got to make sure that we're doing what our children need us to do. We need to build them up. They need to know that they have security and love at home. And so for any of you that are interested, this is a book that I highly recommend, Childhood Disrupted. You can find it on Amazon or wherever you buy your books, but it's tough to give the information that's in this book in a 5-minute video, but I just want you to know the impact you have on your children, and I consider that to be one of our most important jobs we have. We bring these children into the world. We need to take care of them. We need to make sure that they have every chance for success. I appreciate you listening to me, and if you'd like to hear more, please visit the Life's Worth Living podcast. You can get it wherever you download your podcast. You can find out more about Life's Worth Living. We're on all social media platforms. And I'd like to give a shout out to my friends at Miller Motivation Group. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.